I have been writing a piece recently for a magazine, which I'll post or at least let you all know somehow when and if it goes live. But I've been recently reviewing some of these some of these stories. For example, the EV fire in New Zealand, where the government there, or fire experts, so to speak, claimed that an EV, which is really a hybrid, but it still has a lithium battery in it, didn't cause a fire in a home in New Zealand. It started at some other end of the property, not even close to the house. And but the eyewitnesses and videos from people who were actually there demonstrate quite clearly that the EV hybrid lithium battery caught on fire in the garage and did not spread to the rest of the house, but from that source. So there's that. The government's lying to us, which is really part of what this video is about. It's cold. I'm not in the garage, and so I figured I'd do something a little bit special that I've been sort of following over the holidays. Which, by the way, Happy New Year to everybody. And I hope you're doing well, and I hope 2024 is a productive one for you. Of course, 2024, this is the year for the United States anyway, where we are probably going to see a lot of shenanigans. So that was the first one, the New Zealand story. The second one had to do with this guy who had I think it's a Hyandai Ironiq or something like that. Ironiq something. And he missed debris in the road, or at least thought he did, and went and had the Hyundai checked out, and it was scraped on the bottom of the where the battery sits, the battery plate, the deflection plate, whatever you call it. And it voided his warranty because of that. Way to go. Those EV people, they really back up their products. And I think it was Uncle Tony who talked about something along these lines where, come on, cars bottom out, not necessarily on purpose, just from normal everyday driving, railroad tracks, dips in the road, whatever. And if you've got an EV, it's going to avoid your warranty if it scrapes the plate. Now, this isn't really a big deal, you'd say, because hey, man, it's just the scuff plate is scraped. Therefore, no problem, right? No. They recommend you change out the entire battery. And in the Hyundai Ironiq, that meant $61,000. Now, the person who this happened to, he then went to his insurance company because warranty's voided, and the insurance company decided to total the car. It's only a couple of years old. Oh, it's amazing. So I was looking into some other topic. I was actually writing about those two things, and then I was thinking about something that I heard the other day. I haven't done a lot of research in it, but then I started looking into it, and that is about oil. The reason why we have this greening of America is because they say that oil is not a renewable resource. They call it a fossil fuel. Now, there's a problem with this. If you do some of the research on this, oil is usually collected thousands of feet below where we find our fossils. So this is, you might say, logically impossible. You would expect to see the development of oil through the layers of the crust of the earth until you get to the actual pool of it. So I'm going to end with this one: oil abundant, renewable, and clean. But I thought I would just at least give everybody a sense that this is not a new idea. We've been sold the idea that oil is going to run out. We've been told that since the 1970s. And lo and behold, oh my goodness, it's not true. It's kind of like when they tell us that the oceans are going to rise, and they never have, or at least not to the extent that they say they have. But couple that with the fact that my mic is running a little hot. Couple that with the fact that all these people who tell us that the seas are going to rise and Florida is going to be underwater. These are the same people buying oceanfront mansions. So I can't imagine why they would be doing that, knowing that they're going to be underwater soon. Not to mention the fact that the insurance companies are still insuring those houses, which they wouldn't be doing if they were going to be underwater, if that was a fact. But anyway, The Deep Hot Biosphere here by Thomas Gold. I believe he was an MIT professor, member of the National Academy of Sciences. This is a late 1990s book, and I would encourage everyone interested in this discussion, or at least this topic, which is essentially this. Oil is a renewable resource. It is. It's not going to go away, and it continually replenishes itself. Now, I'm not going to give you a deep scientific dive into this. I'm going to try and keep this video short, or at least brief, but give you some of the tools to go and find out for yourself. For my part, I probably should pick up The Deep Hot Biosphere, which I didn't know about until today. I knew some of this stuff, some of these arguments floating around about oil being a renewable resource, but I didn't know in particular about Thomas Gould's Deep Hot Biosphere. Essentially, his argument is this, that it doesn't come from fossil fuels, oil, which means also our gasoline, does not come from fossil fuels. It comes from a organic matter that renews itself, maybe even much quicker than we've all been told by government experts. So I would it's a fairly cheap book if you buy it on Kindle, and you can find maybe even it used for under $20. But if you're going to buy like the new paperback or a paperback in new condition, then you're going to be spending $20 on it. But I leave this for your edification. It's not the only source that we have on this. For example, in 1999, the Discover magazine actually had a very lengthy piece on this, and this is a very long piece. Apparently, it's been updated in 2023, but it was initially ran by Curtis Rist in May 31st, 1999. And he talks about the 1970s and the arguments that we were being told, or the rationale we were being told of why oil is going to go away and that we need to have alternative resources to replace it. This is where the EV revolution starts to get its heft again. After all, I mean, it's like the electric vehicles were made and left in the early 1900s. Oh, and by the way, back then in New York City, for example, there were charging stations almost on every block. I mean, they had charging stations everywhere. Now, this was, of course, with lead batteries, but there's really no difference between a lead battery and its applicability and a lithium-ion battery and its applicability. But anyway, in this part, in Discover magazine, it's, the headline pretty much says it all. We will never run out of oil. Now, back in the 90s, the argument was that, yeah, sure, it might replenish itself, but if it comes from fossil fuels, then it's going to take a very long time. Therefore, we're going to run out of it because our consumption is so high. On the other hand, this due to, I would say, sane and rational research, they know that crude oil or gasoline can come from liquid form, that would be gas, and it can be made into gasoline. I think natural gas, he states here explicitly, can be refined in such a way to push out gas for our vehicles. And anyway, it goes through just mountains of evidence that is not hysterical at all, and certainly not what we are always told. What we are, conspiracy theorists. The conspiracy theorists seem to be those who believe in green energy because it never produces what they say it's going to. What can I say? Now, also, in the late 90s and 2000s, this is a document that you can see up above It's a PDF file, and you could go here and pretty much get the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s sort of gloss on this. They were already questioning the ability of us to run out of oil. And the first one here by Russ Glenn, who I don't know who he is, but I've seen enough stories now going into the 2000s that definitely confirm or at least reinforce some of this stuff. And one of the things that probably a lot of people don't know, and certainly maybe even car enthusiasts, I don't know, but it is that let me just read the top of the first paragraph here, first couple of sentences. I'll go all the way down to here just to start. Oil wells in the Gulf of Mexico are being refilled with oil. Now, let's pause. So there are oil wells that seemingly drop in level. Not necessarily go dry, but drop in level, and then they'll come back to them sometime later, and they'll be refilling. Which when was the last time you heard something like that? Usually, what you hear is, "Hey, an oil well goes dry. That's it." But that's not true. And actually, there's a channel on Twitter about a single guy. I don't know if he has an LLC, but he goes around and he buys seemingly unproductive oil wells, and he puts a pump on it himself. He invests in all that infrastructure, and he gets a few barrels out of it a day. Nothing like what you might need for consumption, but he gets crude oil out of them. This is in Texas, I believe, mostly that he's doing this. And then, he sells it to oil refineries. I mean, it's one way to make a living, I'll tell you. Anyway, so these oil fields in the Gulf of Mexico, or oil holes, pumps, whatever, that they're getting the oil out that they've drilled, are refilling. Now, this has also happened in Russia, which has drilled, to keep reading here, over 308-mile deep wells in the Earth's granite crust. It has worked so well that they worked in Vietnam and found oil off its coast where everyone said there was no oil. Oil used to be in sedimentary rock at 2 to 3 miles deep, but the Russians found a new source. So what is happening? And he explains it here in this brief paragraph that the rocks are heated with methane gases, distilled and it combines with carbonates. This is the science of it all, you see. That occur naturally in the rock, and when mixed together, they form oil. This is an abiotic, non-biological. It does not come from vegetable matter. Now, I'm going to pause right here to say this, that some people do say that vegetable matter, which would be biomass, which he notes here just below, I'm circling that right now, is possible to make oil, hence gas. But it's quite expensive to do it that way. So the upshot here is that oil is renewable, letting the earth do its own thing. And that's why you see some of these wells filling back up. Bruce Bartlett, Washington Times. This is in 2002. And he talks about the Gulf of Mexico where they're being refilled. It's funny how this stuff has all been his sort of a memory hold, isn't it? The World Has More Oil, Not Less, by Alan Karuba. In Vietnam, they talk about their oil fields that they discovered. And then the oil wheels, again, being refilled again. Another article. All of that to get you to, I want to make sure I covered everything here. In 2012, this was rounded up pretty nicely in a magazine, online magazine called The American Thinker. And more specifically to President Barack Obama, who was telling us that oil's going to go away. I mean, it's hard to believe, but that late, they were still sort of espousing this nonsense that oil is not a renewable resource. Now, perhaps a little bit controversially, this is last year or a little less than a year ago, a guy by the name of Ian D. Hossain, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, but said that oil was abundant, renewable, and clean. Now, that's what I'm talking about. Now, who is this guy? This guy is a chemical engineer, and he teaches or has a position at Syracuse University. Now, I'm not going to read a lot of this. I hate it when people read stuff on videos, but I do want to at least point out some of the highlights of this piece, which is pretty forthright. I mean, you don't hear this from real scientists, at least not the scientists that the government or the experts in our institutions want us to believe. But here's the all-encompassing paragraph that oil is a renewable energy resource. It's constantly being produced under the Earth's surface. It's found in various forms, and it has been observed by oil workers that they refill over time. So this has been a constant claim for 30 plus years now. Now, the claims of oil as a limited resource, but they aren't, and our supply remains abundant. The renewable nature of oil means it will be a sustainable source of energy for future generations. In other words, we don't know if it will ever run out, and there is no evidence or proof that it will. So why don't we, have more internal combustion engines? Oh, pollution, yeah. But if you look into anything reasonable, the way that batteries are made today is earth raping, to be honest with you, and it's bad for the environment by their own standards. When you finally start realizing that EV batteries are spontaneously combustible at any moment, the amount of pollutant put in the atmosphere by a lithium-ion battery compared to a gasoline engine or a gasoline period is far greater than gasoline. Now, so Hossein pretty much is saying that oil volume is not fixed, and then he goes through a history of scarcity, and he goes back to the 19th century, and he talks about John D. Rockefeller, who was in his interest at the time to corner the oil market and to make it seem like a scarce product so he could, come on now, drum roll please, drive up prices. Now, that kind of had unintended consequences because people ran with this unverifiable fact that oil was not renewable and scarce to be used in service of the greening of America. So now he goes into a lot of arguments that it's about its uses, which we all know. Most everything comes from coal, oil, to make our electricity, to give us power, at least in the sort of the AC version of it all. But he definitely goes into the argument that oil and natural gas and all play into some of this renewability. So that means that natural gas, for example, is not a finite resource either. It is renewable as much as oil is, which means it's renewable as much as gasoline is once oil is refined. So the short and quick and dirty of all this is to sort of start a conversation and poke holes in the arguments that we're receiving from our experts that oil is a finite resource and that it's a fossil fuel. It's most definitely not a fossil fuel. It is a renewable resource, and we ought not let these arguments run by. I can't imagine why our governments have been lying to us about all of this. Whatever those reasons are, I'm not going to get political as in this. But let's let Hossein have the last word. Having a proper understanding of oil is crucial for a number of reasons, particularly when it comes to forming appropriate energy policy and making informed decisions about energy use. This understanding should be based on accurate information, free from propaganda, scare tactics, and manipulation of perceptions and markets. Yeah. Yeah. There's no reason for us to get rid of the combustion engine. It's far cleaner, far more reliable, and far more, and it gives us far more ability to be productive, whether you are working for a company or you have a farm or you're homesteading or you're a prepper or whatever you want to do. It's one of the only things that we have. And I'm talking here in particular about gas combustion or combustion engines that and vehicles that are free from all of this newfangled technology that they put in them. Those are the ones that give us more freedom of movement than what we see today, because our new vehicles are they're wired in, so people know where. Basically, anybody can tap into your modern vehicle and know exactly where you are, where you went, and for how long you were there. Modern vehicles are sort of a catastrophe in our freedom of movement, if you will. And the old vehicles were not, but they were perfectly reliable, especially if you maintain them. And I've noted this before in some of my videos, especially my reviews of my Gearhead book reviews, Crawford's books on shop classes, Soulcraft, and then of course the book on gearheads and rust. I encourage you to look those both up if you're interested in some of these topics, or at least interested in the topic of where our industry has gone and how our cars have been made basically not cars anymore. They're not vehicles anymore. There's something else. So anyway, that's pretty much it. Oil is a renewable resource, and I encourage you all to dig into this further for your own edification. Okay? All right. Yep. Hang loose, everybody. Happy New Year.